Ugh.
Well, that was a movie.
Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm giving my first thoughts on Joyride, which was written and directed by Adele Lim. It's her first time directing, but she's written before. She wrote Crazy Rich Asians, which had great reviews. I never saw it, but I've heard great things. And Raya and the Last Dragon, which I did see, thought was pretty good. Good, not great. It's starring Ashley Park, Sherry Cola. Is that her real name? Sherry Cola? It's like Sherry Cola? That's funnier than this movie was. Sharina Colada is her real name. That's awesome though. Sherry Cola is a great nickname. Anyway, sorry. Timothy Simons, Stephanie Sue, and Sabrina Wu. So, alright, man, okay, so, alright, in case you haven't seen or know anything about Joyride, it follows a group of Asian American friends as they go to China on a business trip that goes bad. Because of hijinks ensuing, it becomes less of a business trip and more of an adventure comedy. There were two trailers that came out for this movie. When the first trailer came out, I went, oh, well, I had two thoughts. I went, oh, that's Stephanie Sue playing one of the friends, and I loved her in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Hadn't seen her in anything else yet, but I was like, I'll check this movie out because of her. And two, this movie actually looks pretty funny. It's not my typical thing. Not a big fan of just raunchy comedies, raunchy for the sake of it. Also, like, girl comedies, if you will. I mean, obviously, there can be girl-centric comedies that are really good, like Mean Girls. Another really popular one is Bridesmaids. But just like comedy aimed at female audiences, obviously I'm not in the demographic, not usually a huge fan of them, but I thought, man, this movie actually looks pretty funny. And then the second trailer came out, and I remember I was at the movies with one of the guys I review movies with, either Justin or Eric, I forget which, and I was like, oh look, this movie looks funny, and the trailer started going, and I realized, oh, this is a second trailer, and there was not a single funny joke in the second trailer, and I was like, alright, well, trust me, the first trailer made this movie look a lot better. Don't worry about this trailer. Okay, whatever. That was a red flag. It should have been concerning because it's like, well, did they run out of good jokes? Did they use all of the good jokes in the first trailer and didn't have anything new left over to put in the second trailer? That was my thought. But on Metacritic, this movie has a 79% and as of right now has a 6.9 on IMDb. 6.9 isn't a really high rating, but for comedy, it's actually really good, and a 79% for comedy is great. It's fantastic. It's like classic territory. Even for a drama, 79% is really good. So I was like, you know what? All right, maybe it was just a bad second trailer. I want to go into this movie with tempered expectations, but still optimistic that this movie can be as funny and as good as it looked in the first trailer. And my god, I think there was probably 5 jokes in the trailer that made me laugh. And if you count those jokes, there was probably 7 or 8 jokes that made me laugh in this movie. There was just as many jokes that made me roll my eyes or cringe or groan as made me laugh. So there's probably like 8 good jokes, 8 really bad jokes. The rest of the jokes in this movie didn't really elicit any reaction from me or the other 5 people in the theater. It was just dead silence. There was especially this one character called Deadeye, who is like a weeaboo type character, just a really lame K-pop stan, just awkward, socially awkward loser character. And every time she went to tell a joke or do something funny, they did the most painfully long pauses for laughter afterward, and there was not one laugh, I think, the entire movie that came from her character. There really weren't any funny moments at all involving her. The only funny moments, like I said, really were in that first trailer. I enjoyed Stephanie Sue trying her heart out, trying her darndest. She is by far, I think, the best actor in this movie, and she did deliver some of the best jokes. You saw in the trailer the part where they have to stick the drugs up their butt.
Just push, pull, twist it! It's not a puppet, it's my asshole!
That was probably as funny as this movie got, unfortunately. Primarily unlikable characters, just not interesting story, jokes that don't land. This movie all around was a fail. It just fell flat time after time after time. It's one of those movies that, like, when I was in middle school, I probably would have been into this movie a little bit more, because there's just sex for the sake of it. The jokes are really juvenile and stupid, and like there's sexual innuendo jokes that are just really obvious. Like at one point, the main character is having sex. Spoilers for anybody who cares. I'm gonna just get into spoilers. Who gives a shit? The main character is having sex, and like I said, she's supposed to be on a business trip. She gets a phone call, a FaceTime from her boss, and he's like, "What's happening? I heard that the deal didn't close. What's going on?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm really close," while she's having sex. And he's like, "Yeah, you better be coming or something," just like really bad innuendos. And she's like, "I'm going to," whatever, just like really, really bad, unfunny innuendos, just painfully bad. Like I said, something that a middle schooler could have written or would think is funny. So yeah, a lot of that. There's also like an attempt at being earnest a couple times, because, you know, it follows that trope where the main characters all have to hate each other around the third act of the movie, and they do that, and that's lame and boring and predictable. But they also have this thing where she's trying to find her mother, which, by the way, there's a whole thing about how she's not Chinese enough because she's American. She was raised by white parents, but they never actually really go in depth in that at all. Like, none of the actually Chinese characters act any more Chinese than she does. At one point they ramble off Chinese things, and it just wasn't really memorable at all. Like, one of the things that they said was they have a plastic bag full of other plastic bags, and that's just like a poor people thing. Like, I mean, I've seen that in, like, you know, you're poor when you put plastic bags in other bags. It's like, you know, you're redneck when, you know, you're black when, you know, everybody does it. It doesn't make you any of those races, to stop saying that. I did that. Everybody I know really did that growing up. But anyway, they're like, "Oh, she's not Chinese enough," and you think this could be an interesting plot point, and then it doesn't develop into anything. What ends up actually happening is I find out actually she's not Chinese at all. She's actually Korean. That's interesting. Where's that gonna go? Nowhere. It's just a reason for them to go from China to Korea, and it just moves the MacGuffin along. They have to just follow the MacGuffin to a different country now, because she's trying to find her original birth mother, and she ends up finding out that she's dead. And so that moment can feel like a gut punch a little bit, but like a really weak gut punch, like a baby, like a toddler. You know how toddlers are like surprisingly strong? You're like, wow, you hit a lot harder than I thought you could. So like a weak toddler, I guess, is like, and you're like, ow, okay. And then you remember, oh wait, this is just emotionally manipulative, just really crappy screenwriting, and I'm actually not feeling anything at all. You're just pretending that I am because you're playing sappy music and you're making characters cry. Okay, but from there she ends up finding out where she was buried, which oddly enough she goes, gets the records, can't read them because she can't read Mandarin, let alone Korean. And so the lady goes, "Oh, she's dead, I'm sorry. Do you want me to tell you where she was buried?" And she goes, "No," and she leaves, and she calls her parents. And the next scene, she's at the graveyard. So she just said, what, did she go back inside? We didn't see that. Anyway, she shows up there, and then lo and behold, her birth mom's husband is there at the graveyard too, and goes, "Are you so-and-so?" And she's like, "Oh my god, yes." And you're just sitting there laughing at the fact that, like, there's this really sentimental moment happening, but you can't get over the fact that, what, he was just hanging out at the graveyard, happened to be there at the same time. And that's silly, and you roll your eyes and you get over it. However, the film doesn't get over it and goes, "Oh, well, actually, I was here because your friends told me that they thought that you would be here." How did they know? They weren't there when she found out her mom was dead. So what? They just randomly was like, "Oh, we're gonna somehow find this number of this guy we don't know exists because the woman she's looking for is dead. We don't know that though." That just made it so much worse. Your attempt to like close that plot hole just made the whole thing explode. It was terrible. It was so bad. There's one part where it's during the sentimental, like, sad part where everything's going wrong. Stephanie Sue's character is like engaged to this really Christian guy, and she's been lying to him about how she's a perfect little Christian girl too, but she's actually not. She's not a virgin. She has a tattoo, all of these things, and that ends up going viral because of a leaked video. And so he breaks up with her and leaves, and she calls him to like try and win him back. And so she's leaving him a voicemail, and she's like, I want to tell you everything and everyone I've done. Let me start with the A's, I guess. And it was one of those things where it's like Stephanie Sue was trying, and she honestly poured every ounce of acting ability to make that line earnest. But it's like this moment is earnest, but that line is obviously a joke, and a bad joke. Or it could have been an okay joke if it wasn't surrounded by like earnest, tear-jerking moments. So it's just like so out of place. This whole movie is directed horribly. The pacing is terrible. Some moments just fly by, other moments are painfully slow. This movie was just, I mean, yeah, I said it was a first-time director. You can tell it's terribly directed. The acting is mostly mediocre, and the writing, aside from, like I said, 7 or 8 jokes, is awful. So how this movie has a 79%, I don't know. How this movie even has a 6.9, I don't know. Yeah, this is one of the worst movies I've seen this year, and I should have followed my gut after that second trailer, but the first trailer made it look kind of funny. It really wasn't. It's, you know, so by the books, by the numbers, just paint by the numbers, just do every single step A, B, C like you're supposed to do. Don't do anything interesting. Don't come up with any creative jokes or any creative plot devices. Just do the most obvious, basic, stupid thing possible, and don't even dare try to be funny. That's what this movie was. So, yeah, don't recommend it. Oddly enough, don't recommend it. That's what I think. What did you guys think, though? Let me know in the comments below. And, of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you're new here. Thanks, guys. Bye.